Good morning, everyone, and thank you and welcome to the first Ready Livermore Business Workshops. We have today's topic is cybersecurity for small businesses. These workshops are designed to help small businesses become more resilient. My name is Teresa De La Vega. I'm with the Innovation and Economic Development Department. And this workshop, this informative session will cover cybersecurity threats, as well as practical steps businesses can take to protect themselves and their organizations. Our speaker will share real-world examples of successful attacks and provide tips for mitigating common risks such as phishing scams, password attacks, ransomware, and malware infections. The talk will also cover best practices for maintaining secure networks and protecting sensitive data. About our presenter, Mr. Don Hester is a cybersecurity advocate working to make the world cyber safe with over 25 years of experience with the public sector as cybersecurity auditor, educator, and now cybersecurity manager for the city of Livermore. Thank you so much, Chamber, for hosting, and Don, have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Like she had said, I am the cybersecurity manager for the city of Livermore now. And previous to that, I was an auditor looking at organizations to see whether or not their cybersecurity was in place and if it was adequate. And when I came to the city of Livermore, you may have seen in the news in 2019, the city had been hit with a ransomware attack. And as a result of that, the cybersecurity division was set up and my position became available. And I joined the city to kind of help make things a little bit better. So a little bit about the cybersecurity division to let you know kind of what I do at the city to kind of see, how that might work in a small business, but also just to let you know exactly what services the city has available to you currently, which you may not be aware of. And so part of it, one of the things that you're starting to see is that local governments are starting to help local businesses with cybersecurity, helping residents prevent cybercrime, right? Cybercrime is huge right now. People just sending emails to get folks to log in and grab your credentials, to sending you fake emails asking you to do certain things like give out your bank information. So how do we protect people from that? And what part can a local government, such as City of Livermore, help everybody else out with that, right? Our former mayor, Bob Warner, once said that this is an important part of the core mission of the city government, which is to keep citizens safe. And if the number one threat that most people have today is a cyber incident, how do we work to help with that, right? So part of our goals with Cyber Safe Livermore is to increase public cyber safety. And part of that is just to raise awareness, like what kind of things can happen to you. How do we help prevent cyber crime? So our website is full of all kinds of resources. If you go to our website, we have flyers here at the chamber. You can go to City Hall and get it, or you can go to the website and just look up Cyber Safe Initiative, and you should be able to find the page. And we have all kinds of resources. We have them divided up. We have it set up for like individuals. So if you're an individual or you're a family and you just want information on how to protect your kids online, we have information for that. If you need to report a crime, not everything is reported to local government. You can report it to local police, but you may want to follow up with certain federal agencies or other organizations that specialize in that type of cybercrime and reporting it to them. So we have all that information on our website. We want to promote economic development and innovation. So part of technology innovation is with anything new comes risk. A good example of this today is a lot of people are using chatbots and AI to help them craft, statements or make videos or make pictures. With all of that comes great risk. It's a great innovation. You can do lots with it, but there's also a great amount of risk that comes with it. Everything from plagiarism to biases. It can end up in legal litigation. So how do you protect yourself from the bad effects of the good technology, right? It's like anything else. You can have technology that be used for good or bad, and AI is no different. How do we promote that? How do we also help local government or help local businesses help secure themselves? If you get hit and your organization goes out of business because of a cyber attack, that doesn't help the community of Livermore, right? So how do we work together to kind of help each other out? We want to make sure that the whole community is resilient, and resilient as a part of not necessarily just being ready for a fire or an earthquake, but also just anything that could happen to you from a cyber. And part of this is also how do we empower an inclusive future? It's not enough to just say, hey, you're poor and disadvantaged and here's access to the internet. If we don't teach them what to be careful about on the internet, all we're doing was we're opening them up to a whole new set of cyber criminals, right? So how do we protect them when they do it? Because otherwise they can't take advantage of that future. So we want to make sure that we can do what we can to protect everybody. Mayor Marchand recently said that this initiative is an important part of the city of Livermore's mission to create a safe, healthy, welcoming city and provide safe, accessible public amenities. This is an engaging, innovative way to educate our community on the importance of cyber safety and arm them with resources and tools to be cyber safe in their everyday lives. And that's what we're trying to do with this initiative that we have. In fact, the city of Livermore was nominated by the IDC's Smart Cities Award this year as one of the finalists. There were 3 finalists in the category, and we did not win, unfortunately, but we were nominated out of all the other governments in not California, the United States. So I want to say, you know, we did a good job and we're doing something that's innovative because we're trying to help organizations, cities, businesses, and our residents, how we can be cyber safe. And part of that initiative is also reaching out to different areas of the community. What can we do to help with the schools? What can we do to help with nonprofits and other community stakeholders? How can we help them understand what the cyber risks are and so they can protect themselves? We also look at the local community college like Las Positas Community College, which they have courses there in cybersecurity, but they're made more for people who are going to be cybersecurity professionals. But they have those courses there, and that's a good thing. We want to have a workforce because as a local business, you may need to hire someone to help you with cybersecurity. So we want to make sure we have that talent pool available to us. And so working with Las Positas College can help us ensure that we have those future skills that we need. In our other schools and school districts and park districts, making sure that they can work together with that. The cybersecurity division in the city of Livermore partners in order to do this with our police department, with our Office of Innovation and Economic Development, and with our public library, so that we can work with them in their outreach programs and then help bring cybersecurity awareness to a higher level. So that in a nutshell, that's kind of what the Cyber Safe Livermore is trying to do. And one of the things that we have to talk about, because this just happens all the time, is cyber breaches. What happens when cyber breaches happen? And it has an what do I say? It's not uneven, that's not the right word, but it's disproportional impact on small businesses. So for a small business that gets hit by a cyber incident, 30% of those organizations have an official breach. In other words, it's a breach to the point that it becomes known to the public or becomes known to the news or some other type of thing. Now, the statistics of organizations being victims of cybercrime is closer to about 97%. 97% of organizations have had some type of cyber attack. Now, the cyber attack may not have been successful, but I'd like to say that there's 100% that have been attacked, and there's only 3% that think that they haven't been attacked. But of the small businesses, about 25% of small businesses that have a cyber attack go out of business. They have to file, or no, they have to file for bankruptcy. 10% of those go out of business. Those are huge numbers. That's a huge impact. If you look at some of the statistics, one of the things that the California Association of CPAs recently said was that the #1 business risk today is cyber risks, right? So there's something that can happen. Think about your business. whether you're a restaurant or whether you're a dentist or no matter what your business is, think about what would you do if you didn't have access to your computers? How would you continue operations at the end of the day? What if that time that you are down is much longer than, a day? What happens if it's a month that you can't get access to the computer? How do you know if you're a dentist? How do you know who your appointments are with? How do you look at those x-rays that you have on folks' teeth, right? If it's all on the computer, how do you do your job, right? Even at the city, we understand that without technology, we can't even fill a pothole, right? Because we have to go online to order asphalt and we have to pay people, and we have to use a phone. There's all these types of things that are all a part of our technology that can be impacted. If it's not available to us, we can't operate, right? So think about that in your business and think about, okay, and what are the things you should have as a plan on how would you continue to do operations if your computer wasn't available, right? Of course, we hope that that never happens to us. And so we hope that you have backups and you do backups on a regular basis. And by regular basis, I mean daily. But you have to kind of think about how long would your business or how much information would you like to re-enter into your system, right? So if you do it daily, then you only have a day's worth of information that you may have possibly lost. And you think about it, even you may think, oh, I'm a restaurant or, or a gas station or whatever. There's a lot of other liability that you can have too, just from a legal point of view. You have customers that use credit cards in your machines, and if those machines get hacked and the credit card information gets exposed, you could be liable for their losses, any losses that they have. You're also liable for the bank's losses if your system is not set up to be compliant with the rules of cybersecurity that the payment card industry has. So if you take a look at some other interesting facts to talk about that, is that cybercrime, if we measured it like you do the economies of nations, it would be the third largest economy in the world, cybercrime. Just cybercrime by itself is the third largest in the world. That's huge. There's a lot of cybercrime going on, and we're talking about it being like $6 trillion in damages around the world. So that's a huge impact on all organizations. It's getting to the point where you can't buy cyber insurance. Now, something as a small business you may want to look into. Should you buy insurance so that if you have a cyber incident, that you're going to be covered? Your traditional liability insurance does not cover it. It's excluded from it. It's separate insurance that you need to buy. They may have some small cyber type of what do I want to say, amendments or whatever inside of a regular liability policy, but typically it's not, right? Typically it's a separate. And by the way, they try to, insurance companies don't make money by paying out claims, right? So if you have an insurance company that you do have cyber insurance, they're going to try and help you. They'll give you sometimes free resources for you to help and secure your systems. So that's a good thing to kind of look into if you don't have that. Plus, they're going to give you guidance. They're going to say, hey, we want you to do X, Y, and Z in order to give you insurance. One of the things that they're looking for is what we call multi-factor authentication. In other words, when you log into something, your database, your customer database, or your website, your bank account, that you don't just have a username and a password, but then you also have to use your phone or a device to then enter in another code or touch the computer with the other device, or depending on what your multi-factor authentication is. It's just another way of doing it to verify, right? You have your username, your password, and you have something else. And that something else helps prevent somebody, if they get your username and password, they don't have that something, that other something else, which could be your fingerprint. It could be a dongle key. It could be a code that you have to type in that your phone gives you, a text message you may get back from the bank or something like that. Those things make it much difficulter for a cyber criminal to break into your accounts. If you don't have that on your bank accounts, you should have that on all your bank accounts. You don't want them to be able to log into your bank accounts and start transferring money out. That wouldn't be good. So part of this is also just how do we help everybody? We're trying to get to a digital world, and we have the government side things you talk about digital citizens, right? More and more organizations are expecting the government to deliver services at the same level that Amazon delivers services. In other words, they want the services to be available online on demand. And we're just used to that now, right? Sunday, 7 o'clock at night, everything's closed, Target's closed or whatever, and you need to go shopping. You don't have to worry about it now because you can just order on Amazon and it might be there the next day, right? So we've gotten used to that. So now when we talk about the government, how do we make sure that on Sunday night you want to get a new permit? Can you start the process on Sunday night? Having city, right? So people are looking more and more, but then also just thinking about employment participation, economic development, educational achievement, social and civic inclusion, health and well-being. We want to make sure that as all those things become available online, that we make it more inclusive, more people have access to it. And generally, it works that way. If we have things online, more people have access to it. But how do we protect them when they're on? Right? So we just go and say, hey, here's a fire hose, just turn it on full speed, right? And if you've ever worked with a fire hose, if you just grab a hold of it and you haven't been trained on how to handle it, if you lose control of it, it'll hurt somebody, especially if the water's going at full speed out, right? So we don't want to just give somebody the fire hose of the internet. We want to make sure we give them the training that they need or the understanding of how to protect themselves. And a lot of what the public libraries do try to bridge that digital divide. They try to provide residents, regardless of whatever economic status they have, access to that online data and educational opportunities as well. And so how do we also get them securely locked? And so cybersecurity is going to be an important part of that, is to make sure that we are able to protect people while they're online. So some of the goals that we have with cybersecurity, Cybersecurity Livermore, is to increase public cyber safety, cybercrime prevention, promote economic development, community resilience is another thing we want to promote, and empower that inclusive future. So we understand that there is a great need for this, and this is why we're deciding to take a leadership role in this. There's a few other cities across the country that are doing the same thing. They're helping citizens at the local level. Now, we don't come out to your business and help you set something up. That's not a part of what we do, but we do provide resources on our website that you can use that can help you. If you follow some of the guidance that's on there, you can help protect your organization, save yourself millions of dollars if you ever have a cyber incident. And so it aligns with the city's values that we have. President Biden once said that the United States faces a persistent and increasingly sophisticated malicious cyber campaigns that threaten the public sector, the private sector, and ultimately the American people's security and privacy. And if you think about some of the things, we have nation states that have cyber attacks that they launch against us. We have cyber criminals that launch attacks against us. And they attack sometimes the critical infrastructure, the power grid, the water grid, utilities, communications. And if you're somebody who works from home and the internet's down, you can't work from home, right? So it's an important part that those utilities that we all rely upon every day are available. They have to be highly resilient, and cyber incidents can take those things out, right? And we've seen there was a power outage in North Carolina. This wasn't a cyber attack, but there was an attack where a gunman was shooting at the power station and took out power for millions of residents on the East Coast because there was an attack on the critical infrastructure. Now they can have, if they launch a cyber attack, it has the potential of being just as devastating. So it affects all of us, and we want to do what we can to protect ourselves. And I know sometimes I have this comment about here because I think it illustrates the point. Sometimes, when someone talks to you and they say, hey, I want to talk to you about cybersecurity, you think, oh, they're just going to ask you to make a longer password, right? With more special characters and other things, right? Well, no, actually, when we look at cybersecurity as a professional, we try to figure out how do we make this as least impactful to folks, right? So you may see that your iPhone or your Android phone or whatever phone that you have may do facial recognition, right, to get you logged in. That way, somebody doesn't have your password, it has to be your face. Not that those are foolproof, but they're better security. You have to type your PIN number in and it has to see your face, has to do both of those things. That's even better security, right? And that's usually not too difficult. You can remember a PIN number, 4 numbers, plus your face. That's a really good way to do it. And it's not as difficult as having to remember a 20-character long password that's upper and lower case, special characters, numbers, and hieroglyphs. I don't know, whatever it is, right? So we want to try and help with that. So part of what I do in cybersecurity is help enable organizations, specifically in the city of Livermore, so they can do their jobs, right? Because the police officers can't do their jobs if their systems aren't working. Can't receive 911 phone calls if that system goes down, right? So they have to be highly resilient. Your business, whatever it is, whatever you rely upon computers for is necessary for you to do your job. And maybe that's just, if you're doing marketing on and Facebook, well, that's still part of technology. It's still part of your business. It's bringing people in. So how do you make sure that somebody doesn't log into onto your Facebook page and then start posting stuff that's objectionable and everybody starts getting upset at your organization for it? That's happened more than once. So how do you protect for that? So we look to the future, and as we look towards the future, we're finding that we're going to see a lot more technology taking over different aspects of our lives. AI and robotics is planning to do a huge impact for us. So you should expect to see that coming forward. And one of the things we need to do is how do we secure that when it's as more and more things get connected to the internet. For crying out loud, you may not know this, but there's new tags that people put on cows that monitor the health of the cow, and that's connected to the internet. So that's another thing that's connected to the internet. Not that someone's going to hack into the cows. I don't think that's going to happen. But we have to start to think about all these other things that are being connected to the internet, and are they as secure as we're keeping them? A good example is I did a presentation for the Wine Growers Association. There's new technology in wine growing where they have sensors out in fields where the wine, the grapes are being grown, so it can monitor the temperature, the humidity, it can monitor all those things, and then let staff know, do you need to water more or not? Some of those things can even increase the watering on hot days, or it can adjust for that. If someone hacked into it, they could just turn the water on and leave the water running. What ends up happening, you get a big water bill, and then you've also wasted a lot of resources, right? So it can have, and that may be a smaller impact, but that's still going to be an impact on our organization. Another really cool thing that I saw too is some of they have robotics. They have little car robots that go up and down, looking at all the grapes to kind of tell you, and I don't know what they can tell from looking at the camera, but the robot goes by and looks at the grapes and it tells you, I don't know, getting diseased or not, so that the visitor can take corrective action. So technology is going to be here, it's going to be cool, it's going to help us out with stuff, but how do we protect that as well? Right? AI is a huge one right now. Everybody's getting into AI. It's really powerful, but the bad guys are using it too. The bad guys are using it to craft much more sophisticated phishing attacks. A phishing attack, if you don't know what that is, it's typically an email that someone will send you that says it's trying to get you to click on something or tempt your username password in because they're trying to get that. In the past, you've probably seen some of those emails and you quickly saw that it was probably just a scam because you read it, definitely seemed like English wasn't the first language of the person writing it, It didn't look like it was really coming from the FBI because they were saying things that didn't make any sense that the FBI would ever say. But now they're using AI to come up with emails that are tailored to really be much more convincing. And some of them are really, really good. So they're using that against us already, right? So let's say you're not even using any AI, they're already using AI to try and break into our systems to take advantage of us. And it can help with the language barrier for the threat actors or the bad guys that are trying to connect to you, right? Because if English isn't their first language, it doesn't matter. The AI can figure it out for them. And AI can write it, so it can be multiple languages too. So it basically is giving them the capability. Not only that, bad guys have also used AI to write code, and they've written code that is malware, basically like a virus or something like that, that was actually very effective and much more effective than we thought it was going to be. And people have put stops on AI so that AI can't do those things, but people have figured out ways to hack it to make the AI do what they want it to do. So again, it's always an arms race, right? You know, back in the days, it used to be people had, you know, swords and shields, and eventually, you know, someone got black powder and got a gun and a cannon, right? And everybody else had to get guns. Then, you know, we had castles, and then people had, you know, bigger cannons, and the castles weren't as effective anymore, right? So it's just this escalating thing. It's now on the cyber side, and it's the same. So whatever you thought you knew about cybersecurity 5 years ago doesn't exist anymore. We're all beyond all that. So I remember when I first started in this, like 25 years ago, I'd say, well, do you have backups? Do you have antivirus stuff? And do you have a strong password on your Wi-Fi? And that was all you really needed to worry about. That's not the case anymore, unfortunately. If you're just doing that, good, but that's only the tip of the iceberg of all the stuff that we have to do. And so this gets back to this Global Economic Forum. They had a global risk report in 2002, the end of 2002. Great quote from them. I just wanted to bring that up. It says, as society continues to migrate towards a digital world, which we already talked about earlier, everybody wants everything to be like Amazon, right? You want to just go online, order what you want, and be done with it. You want that same level from your doctor. You want the same level from your dentist. You want the same level from your government, right? So we all know that that's what everybody wants. But the threat of cyber crime looms large and routinely costing organizations tens, even hundreds of millions of dollars. The average cost of a data breach worldwide, this is the average cost, so small organization to large organization, the average cost is $4 million of a cyber incident. So if you think about it, I spoke earlier about having cyber insurance. Do you have cyber insurance? Does it cover $4 million, right? And you think, oh yeah, I'll just get $4 million worth of coverage and I'll be all good, right? Well, the insurance company may not give it to you if you're not doing what you need to do to protect your system. They're going to give you a long list. They give you an application. The application, when I first started at the city of Livermore, which wasn't that long ago, was 1 page of questions. It's now 9 pages of questions and small type too. They used to ask you to do backups, and it was yes, and that was it. Now there's 15 questions just on backups. How can you do backups? What kind of backups do you do? Do you do them on all systems? They just keep on adding questions on them. Because what they're learning is that they're paying out every time somebody gets hacked, and they're like, okay, we got to stop paying out. This doesn't make sense. But they're in business to make money. They're not in business to keep on paying us out, right? So that's why they're asking those questions. If you answer no to too many of them, they're going to say, no, we're not going to give you insurance. Now, here's the scary part. I just said that $4 million is the average cost worldwide, all organizations. What's the average cost in the United States? It's $8 million. So it's twice what it is worldwide. So we're getting hit more often. We have more larger companies. I'm not sure exactly why that is. I didn't see all the statistics, but that's what we're looking at. So disproportionately in the United States, we get hit with those kinds. So, and if I point to these things, you know, because a long time ago, there was, when I got into the business, which was a long time ago, we didn't have a lot of folks who studied this on a regular basis, right? Cybersecurity was kind of like, oh, that's an IT issue. Well, no, this is a business issue today. It's not an IT issue. It's not something IT needs to do. It's something the business needs to do. It's a business risk at the end of the day. Because if you get hit, your business can't work, right? So it's a business risk. So how do we address that? Right? PricewaterhouseCoopers also did a survey on that, just talking about, hey, talking about reliance. This is the way I like to put it. Have you ever cooked like a lobster? Right? You put it in water and you turn it on and then you'll bring it up to a boil. The lobster doesn't know it's getting cooked until it's too late, right? So you go back to the early 90s when, I started in technology. It was a novel thing if somebody had email. You didn't really rely upon it. Everybody just got facts. But now, over time, our reliance on computers has grown. You think about how many people back in the early 2000s got on the kick of being paperless. Get rid of all your paper files, put them all on the computer, it makes everything easier. And it does. But guess what? Once you don't have paper and everything's in the computer, guess what? If your computer goes down, all your paper is gone, right? All your data is gone at the end of the day. So but the thing is, over that same period of time, we become reliant on technology, but have we added more and more and more security to it? And that's what we haven't done. And so like the lobster, we end up cooked, right? We didn't realize it over time, but we did it. So the important part that I think the PricewaterhouseCoopers survey points is that executive management is not sufficiently aware of what the cyber risks are to their organizations. And it calls for them to become more aware and view it as a board issue and not just an IT issue. And actually, from a point of view, there's a lot of cyber risks that have nothing to do with IT. The traditional IT folks have nothing to do with it. I mean, like in a local government like us, there's a lot of things. Let's say you have manufacturing and you have an operational technology part of the manufacturing process. Robots or conveyor belts or whatever you got, they're running all on systems, and we usually call those operational technology or industrial control systems. And those systems are typically run by engineers, not IT folks. But increasingly, those are on networks that are basically just like our IT networks. And those things also have cyber risks. Someone could take those systems out, and then you would not be able to continue operations if you're in manufacturing. And you think about it, a friend of mine is a distiller, he runs a distillery, and it's all automated. It watches the temperature for him and it adjusts everything like that. If something attacked that, it could ruin a whole batch of whatever he's cooking, right? That could cost him quite a bit of money, tens of thousands of dollars. So in lost, potential revenue. So it really is important for, as a business owner, to think about this. This isn't just an IT issue, it's your issue, right? How are you going to protect yourself? A good example of that, of operational technology, part of one of the things that we're concerned about also is, as you know, City of Livermore has a water treatment plant. What happens if that got attacked and, God forbid, they couldn't allow sewage to come in, right? You can't flush your toilet. That would be a really bad thing, right? So we need to be resilient. We need to make sure they do that. We have physical things in place to make sure that it's resilient. We have security things in place for the cyber side of things, make sure that doesn't happen. But it could happen, right? Just like it could happen with a business. So how do we look at those things? So that's another example of something that's typically IT. Local elections. What do we do about local elections? Right? Disinformation. During our last election cycle, we had folks post on other nation states posting on social media sites saying Democrats vote on one day and Republicans vote on another day. And for some folks that don't know, it's always on one day and everybody's supposed to the same day. But they don't know, and they see that and they think that's true. And then they take action based on that. And then that means that this is with our election. Here's the thing, that's not an IT issue, right? But that's a cyber risk. It's a cyber threat. Yeah. So how is somebody addressing it? What happens if somebody logs into your Facebook account and then starts saying something horrific that your customers would freak out about, right? Again, not typically something that IT's experienced with being able to deal with. And then we have the whole idea of this IoT stuff, Internet of Things, just other things like your cameras that connect to the network, Think about this. Think about every device that you have in your house that is connected to the internet in one way, shape, or form. How many of you have a thermostat that's connected to the internet? A fridge, maybe your washer and dryer, maybe your game console. Maybe you have one of those Alexas or Google Assistants, that's connected. What about your stereo system, right? Think about all the systems that you have in your house that are connected. How do those things get updated on a regular basis? What about your TVs? We actually had an incident where people's TVs got hit with ransomware. And then the TVs weren't available anymore, and you basically just had to throw them out and get new TVs. There was no cure for it. Right? So what do you do with that, right? We don't think about those things. I don't even think about those things. What about the tablets and the phones that you have that are also connected? What about your car? Does your car connect to the internet? Right? And you think about all that. I went through my house. There's only 2 people living in my house. There's at least 25 devices connected. And I have them separated on different networks because I don't want them all to be in the same network in case something happens. But if you have a printer or scanner, that's also on there. Do you have any? Some of the lights that you may have, maybe think about all this. So now someone hacks into my lights, I don't know what they're going to do. I can make different colors than I want, but maybe that's not a big issue. But think about all the other things are. But if they get into that device, now they're on your network. Now they can get onto your computer possibly when you forget to patch it. So again, it's becoming much more an issue. We call that area like the convergence of IT and information security and physical security, because that's coming now too, right? Because most of your physical security system, most door systems now are on the network. Most camera systems are now on the network. Maybe they're even in the cloud for where you store the video. So there's this convergence now between IT security and physical security. And that's been going on for, the first time I read about it was probably in 2003. It's still kind of going on. Some organizations have physical security and cybersecurity separate, others put them all together, right? You will find in most of the larger corporations, you're starting to see that cybersecurity is separate from IT. And there's a reason for that. Part of that is provide oversight to make sure IT is doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? Making sure that IT is protecting what they're supposed to. That smaller organizations, local governments are a little bit behind on that, but larger organizations, pretty well defined. That's a good security control. So we have other predictions that are coming. Gartner, which is a research institute, there's a number of different ones, but they're just one of them. And they're looking from 2023, which is this year, to 2025, that they expect that there's going to be 75% of the world is going to be covered by some law that says that their information should be kept private. Right? In California, we already have a law, so we're already kind of one of the strictest in the world. And then European Union has GDPR, and that's already one of the strict. It's also very similar in California, very strict as well. But the rest of the world may not necessarily have the same level of strictness, but it's coming so that most of the world's population is going to be covered under one of that laws. And that means any of the customer data you as a small business have has to be protected. You already have California Consumer Protection Act. You already have responsibilities to protect it. You already have responsibilities to contact the state attorney general's office if you've been hacked. You also have responsibility to, depending on what the information is, to maybe provide credit monitoring for those folks who you have their information and lost. The whole ethical part discussion about that. Hey, I have somebody else's data. How should I be a good steward of it? How should I protect it? This is my statement to it. And that is, it's never the wrong time to do the right thing, right? So it's always a good idea to protect that customer data because you just don't want to have them upset, right? You could lose a lot of business that way. So they're talking about cyber risk will be primarily determined in third-party transactions and business relations for the 60% organization. This is a huge one because we're starting to see that the bad guys are attacking third parties to get into your network. So if you heard about the Target breach a couple years ago, and then I think it was Home Depot or Lowe's, one of those was hacked. Both instances, it was a third-party vendor that connected into their systems that got compromised. The that then got into their system. In addition to that, in both of those instances, they were not connecting to normal computer system. They were connecting to what we call industrial control systems. I think in one case it was the cooling systems. I think was what it was, that keeps the groceries cool in Target. I think the other one was HVAC system, and the other, don't quote me on that. I think that's what it was. But they attacked those things. So they attacked the OT side of things, not the IT side of things. Once they got into it, then they could attack the IT side. So this is why it's really kind of important that third parties, when anybody accesses your information, you gotta, how do you know that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing? You put your information up in the cloud somewhere. Do you know what they're doing? How are they protecting that stuff, right? There's a lot that you should be looking at in that. Like, if they have a breach, are they going to tell you? Guarantee it's not in your contract that they're going to tell you if they have a breach. They'll say, oh, California law says we have to tell you that. They have to tell an individual if they have a breach of an individual's PII, personally identifiable information. There isn't a law that says they have to contact an organization. If it's an organization, if it's organizational information. Now, most of them will, but how soon would you want to hear about it? After they figured it all out 2 months later? Or do you want to know about it like within 24 hours, right? I would want to know right now. I want to know, did you have a breach? Tell me about it. So we're starting to see that kind of stuff. So we're seeing that there's ransomware. A lot of organizations are getting hit with ransomware. What ends up happening with ransomware is they come in, they lock your system out, and then they ask you to pay a ransom. If you don't pay the ransom, then they won't give you a decryption key and you can't get into your system. What we have found now is that most of this ransomware now is, we call it double extortion. That was one extortion. The double extortion is they'll break into your system, they'll lock your system out, then they'll take your data out of your system, they'll have your data, and they'll say, hey, I'm going to release this data if you don't pay the ransom. I'll give you the key back and I'll give you the information back. Now, of course, we're dealing with cyber criminals, so do you trust them? That's a hard one, right? But here's the thing, if all the cyber criminals never give you your information back, nobody would trust them, nobody ever make payments. They're business people too, and most of them are focused on business. They have to make money, and they're only going to make money is if they're a good company, good organization, you can trust them, right? So they have a vested interest in making sure they do it. Now, you break into it, usually your insurance company sends out some instant responders, and they know who the bad guys are. They'll say, and they even have names for them. And they'll say, yes, we know this threat actor group typically will give you the keys and it will work and you'll be able to recover your system. Or they'll say, no, this one won't give you back your information. Right? So you're not completely in the dark usually with that. But here's the thing. A lot of the attackers are not just cyber criminals. Sometimes it's a nation state. Big nation states doing it, North Korea, Iran, Russia, currently are the big ones doing that type of thing. Sometimes they're not breaking into the system to make money, they're breaking into the system to break it.
Oh.
They're going to pretend like they're cyber criminals asking for money, but they have no intent. That's what Russia did prior to one of their other invasions when they attacked Ukraine on the cyber side of things. NotPetya went in, broke the systems, looked like it was ransomware, so kind of made everybody think of cyber criminals, but it turned out it wasn't. There was no way to recover. So the other thing is, in the United States, you can't pay a terrorist nation or terrorist group a ransom. It's against the law. So you'll find out that there's going to be a number of times where you will not be able to make the payment, right? So legally, you'll be barred from making a payment. So you're going to have to figure out a different way of recovery, right? So you're going to see more regulations around that, a little bit more required. We call it attribution. In other words, somebody has to determine who the bad guys really are to make sure that they're not one of these nation states, because we don't want to fund terror, right? So that's what it's going to come down to. They're looking at, most organizations are going to have somebody in the executive team that understands cybersecurity. If you are a publicly traded company, the requirement, the Securities and Exchange Commission has already put the requirement out there. So again, this is going to be somebody that's not a part of IT. This is going to be somebody who reports directly to the governing body and who has specific cybersecurity certifications, right? You can't just pick the finance person and say, okay, you're in charge of cybersecurity. It has to be somebody who's qualified. So that's on publicly traded companies. Reason for that is we all invest in publicly traded companies. And we want to make sure that they're addressing these risks, right? Because that's the betterment for us, for our retirements or for whatever, right? We want to make sure they're doing it. So you're going to start to see that trickle down into other organizations saying, hey, do your board members or do your executive team have access to that level of cyber risk information, right? So that you have somebody to talk to and say, hey, we're looking at doing this new project. We're going to do these robots are going to go out in the wine field. We're going to do all this kind of stuff. What are the risks and how do we make sure that we don't fall victim of any of those risks, right? So that's what they're going to be looking for, right? A lot of CEOs are going to be looking at, and a lot of boards are going to be looking at making sure it's not just cyber, but one of the things they're looking for is environmental, social, political, what they call it, social, they call it social governance now, and they want to make sure that you're doing the right thing for the environment, you're doing the right thing for society, you're doing the right thing to protect yourself with cyber. So you're starting to see these things start to creep up into that higher level executive team, make sure that they're doing the right things for that. And you're starting to see people saying, I'm not going to buy from a company that's, putting waste into the environment. I'm not going to invest in a company doesn't have a CISO on the board because they're going to get hit with a cyber incident. And then my profits that I would get through, my investment, they'd be lost, especially if small businesses go out of business after a cyber incident, right? And that's much more, I guess if you took your whole retirement and you put it into start a small business with your friend, he doesn't do anything about the cybersecurity and it goes out, you've lost everything, right? So it's for a disproportional impact to small business. We're already seeing this. There was news in the news this week where a successful attack had been launched against operational technology that could have put human lives at risk. So we're starting to see, again, this crossover from cyber to physical, where they're turning off the safeties on the robots on the factory floor. So there are safety things in place to make sure that a robot doesn't, if it senses a human, it would stop, so it doesn't, hurt somebody. Turning that off. That guy's looking at doing that kind of stuff. That is obviously not a cyber criminal. That's somebody that just wants to cause mayhem or hurt somebody. So we're starting to see those things now too. So there's a couple of different things that are myths. I found this on the internet. I thought it was really great. So I'm just going to give credit to this person. I think was hackercombat.com. I guess is who did. But a couple of myths, because these are the same myths, because when I talk to people about cybersecurity all the time, when I was an auditor, it'd be funny. I come in and I say, hey, I'm here to talk to you about IT governance. And they say, oh, IT's down the hall. Like, remember, you don't understand, IT governance is not about what IT does, it's about how you manage it. So I'm here to talk to you, actually. But the first myth is that cybersecurity is all about technology. It's not all about technology. I hope I've already made that case for you. Small businesses don't need to worry about that. I hope that I've also made that clear to you that there's a disproportional impact for small businesses. Cybersecurity is too expensive. There's a lot of free resources. There's a lot of things you can do for inexpensive. And yes, some of it's going to cost, but it's cheaper than having to deal with an incident afterwards, right? Cybersecurity is the only responsibility of the IT department. I already talked to you about that, but executives need to be looking at that as well. And cybersecurity is too complex. Some of the simplest things have the greatest impact, like using multi-factor authentication that I talked about earlier. That can stop 20% of these attacks. That's one little thing. So if you just do the couple little things, you can really come out and do that. So I'll talk a little bit more about trends. I want to make sure that we cover some of that. Number one risk, I think I mentioned that at the very beginning of this, but the number one risk, and this comes from is cyber risk. So no matter what business you're in, number one risk. Now you think about that, and even in a local government, because I work for government, number one risk. In other words, the most likely thing that's going to happen to us. Yes, certain things could happen that could have a greater cost to the city as far as loss, But, $4 to $8 million being, the average of an incident, that is still a significant risk. And we take it seriously. That's taxpayer money, right? We don't have a lot of money laying around just to say, oh, okay, we can deal with a cyber incident like that, and throw out $8 million. No, we don't, right? So we want to make sure, but that's the same thing for a business, right? At the end of the day, you don't have all this extra money just lying around, for sure. So what are you gonna do about it? Let's see, what else do we have here? The survey also shows that climate change is moving up to number 7 in risk, but again, number 1 is still cyber. So there's a mega data breach that happens. The average cost is now, it goes up 8% per year. We're doing 42 million of having a breach. And you have to think about it, when you have a breach, what are all the costs related to a breach? And this is a tough one. So a couple of things that will end up costing you. The people you have to call to come in to help you get the bad guy out of your network, right? So your incident responder is what we typically call. You're gonna have a cost for that. You're gonna have a cost for recovery. So your staff is gonna have to recover and bring everything back up the line. The incident responder is just there to make sure the bad guy gets out. You're responsible for getting everything back up and running. Now you may have to call somebody else to kind of help you do that, but that's gonna still take on. What's another cost that you might have? What about your cyber insurance? You had cyber insurance and you had a loss. What do you think your rates are going to be next year? Well, they're going to go up. What about your credit rating? It's now affecting organizations' credit rating. And credit raters are looking at that and saying, you're not managing your business very well. So you're going to get dinged for that. So this is a new thing that's just started up. So they look at this as a risk, right? Because if your organization could go out of business, then your credit risk is high. So it totally makes sense. It just took them a little bit of time to get to it. So now we've started to see that credit ratings are affected. I think AT&T's credit rating went down because of an incident they had. Now, what about litigation? Someone relies upon you for a service, you're not able to provide that service because of an incident, they may sue you for that. What happens if somebody got hurt? They might sue you for that. What happens if their information was now released and they bring a lawsuit? Interesting thing happened last year. A lot of people didn't really pay attention to it. When I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a huge difference. Typically, if you're going to sue a company, you have to show that you had a loss. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sue them. Recently, last year, I forget what level the court was, but it was on the East Coast. It wasn't here in California, circuit court, or I forget what court it was. But they actually said that the plaintiffs did not need to show damages in order to sue for a breach of their personal information. That's huge. Mm-hmm. Now, whether that stands up, if it gets to the Supreme Court, whether it stands up or not, but this is a trend. It is a very interesting, possibly troubling trend, because even if they have a loss and then nothing shows up, you could still end up having a loss. So that's another way that you can lose money from it is litigation. Be all kinds of different ways. If you have a third-party company, they may stop doing business with you. You may have to stop doing business with them because they were the reason why you got hacked. There's all kinds of other things. So business partnerships may be hit as well, which may also cost. Supply chain may be interrupted. We all kind of felt that, I think, when COVID happened. Remember the run on toilet paper, right? Well, same type of thing. There was a run on laptops too, right? Because everybody had to go work from home and everybody had to buy laptops, and we weren't able to bring them into the country anymore because ships were stuck out at the port. So we had a really big problem with that. That actually had an impact. That had an impact on the entire economy. So whether you think it or not, everybody got impacted with that one way or another. The impact was a loss. There's some money to get back. So looking at the number of successful cyber attacks. Now, cyber criminals, they're just like a business. So if they attack you and they hack you or whatever they're doing, they're giving you good customer service because they want you to pay the ransom, right? So if you get a ransomware attack, they'll say, hey, contact us here, we'll help you out. We'll even tell you how we got in so that you can make sure it doesn't happen again in the future. That'll cost you extra, but we'll help you with that. Right? So they're doing that kind of stuff. But if you're a business, do you like repeat customers? Yes, right? So what do you think the bad guys like? Repeat customers, right? And so you look at it, this is a troubling number to me. And so between 1 and 5 times, almost 45% of organizations that get hit are hit between 1 and 5 times. Not just once, multiple times. Between 6 and 10, it's almost a third. That's huge. And over 10 times, 12%. That's huge. Right? You think about that. It's not that you just got hit once, you get hit multiple times. And the bad guys are like, hey, this is a heyday, especially if you pay, right? They're definitely going to want to come back. And if you don't pay, they say, well, I'm going to do it again next time. I'm going to try harder this time to get into the pay. And remember I told you about they're doing 2 types of extortion now. There's actually a third one. One is they say, hey, we're going to release the information. And we'll give you your system back. What do you think the third one is? We're going to contact all of your customers and send them an email because you had all their emails. So now that we have all their emails, we're going to tell them to tell you to pay us. So what are you going to do when your customer calls you and says, I just got an email saying they're going to release my information on the dark web unless you pay them this money. What do you think your customers are going to do? They are going to do everything they possibly can to get you to pay. And there's probably new ways that I haven't even thought of yet, or we haven't even thought of, that they're going to come up with in the future and to try and get us to pay. That's at least 3 different ways that I know of it. 3 different ways.
What kind of payment are they talking about?
Usually, so here's the big thing. So like, I want to say, let's talk about the city of Atlanta. Both of them, the cost of it was about 20 million. Once they were here, they were out for multiple months. Both of them, the asking ransomware payment was less than $100,000. So you could have paid $70,000 or $20 million.
Wow.
They opted to not pay the ransom, $20 million. That's huge, right? And you think about that, and you think, oh, well, that was a couple of years ago. Did you hear the city of Oakland just got hit a couple months ago? They were hit pretty bad. Did you hear about what other large city got hit yesterday? City of Dallas. City of Dallas got hit pretty bad. All their printers started printing up a little note saying, hey, we hacked into your system because your security sucks, and you didn't invest in it, now you're going to pay us. Please pay us, and then we'll help you. And it was a very almost funny kind of way that they wrote it. It was seriously is funny. The Dallas Police Department is freaking out. They're not happy at all. But when you read the note, you kind of chuckle at it just because of the way they wrote it. But it's like, again, invest in the cybersecurity now or pay later. In cybersecurity, we have a term that is what we, as a professional, we've gone past like, hey, antivirus and be good. You got to. It's not a matter of if you're going to get attacked. It's when you get attacked. How are you going to respond to it? So, and if you have a poor response, it's going to cost you more money. You know how long people are typically in your system before you find out that they're in your system, the bad guys? They're typically in there for about 6 months before they get caught. 6 months inside your system, watching all your things.
Oh my God.
In fact, this just happened. So you look this all up, it's all public knowledge. Western Digital, they make hard drives, they just got hit with it. And the bad guys sent them screenshots of the meetings that they were having talking about the cyber instance that they were trying to deal with. So the bad guys are like, we're watching you. Here's proof.
Oh my God.
So yeah, they're in your systems, they're in there for that long. So the key to that is, what is your capability of detecting if somebody is inside your system? Like, what do you have that can protect you from that, right? There's a lot of software that's out there that can kind of help you to detect that stuff and alert you and lock it out and do all that kind of stuff. You want to be able to detect it as fast as possible. You don't want them to be in there for 6 months, because this is how they get in here 1 to 5 times. There was a local government that was hit recently, 2 years ago. They got hit once. They had called incident responders in. They thought they got everybody out of the system. The incident responders left, they got hit again. What happened was, nobody even thought to look at it. The phone system that's on the network The bad guys hid inside of that. And then when everything was gone, it phoned home, literally, the phone system phoned home to the bad guys then launched the attack again. So that's how they got hit twice, because they never got them all the way out. So that's another thing. So once someone's in there, you really need to make sure they're out of there.
Wow.
And your IT staff is probably beyond their capabilities. You need a specialist to go in there and do it. I mean, it's a lot of really complicated stuff. Again, where I talked about it, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of talk about this, but insurance is becoming huge. Everybody wants to buy it. It used to be able to buy it for cheap. You buy $5 or for $1 million. Buy you more. The price keeps on going up every year. And like I said, the questionnaires are getting longer and longer and longer, and they're adding more and more exclusions. A new exclusion that was added is if it's related to cyber war, it's not covered. So this is where the attribution comes into effect. Let's say somebody puts ransomware on your computer. The FBI comes as part of the thing to help figure out who it is that actually does it. They find out it's Russia. They find out it's Russia. You know what your insurance is going to say? That's part of a war. You're not covered. And then the FBI is going to say, that's Russia. You can't make the payment. Right? Great. That sucks, right? It's kind of a bad situation to be in. Right, but again, so you want to watch out for that. Like I said, the renewals are expensive. Even for governments, we're getting hit at it. It rose by like 96%. And year over year, it's like 204%. It's like crazy. It just keeps on going up and up. This is the thing is, insurance companies will have these actuarial tables. The underwriters look at all this kind of stuff. They have statistics for hundreds of years. They know how often people trip on sidewalks. They have a fairly good idea. They'll know how much they'll say, hey, we'll give you it for this price. If we get this many people pay for it at that price, we're going to have X amount of losses and we can make money. Cyber insurance is brand new. They don't have actuarial tables. A lot of the information we have about hacks is incomplete. We don't really know who caused the hack, right? Until we get higher and more sophisticated where we're saying, oh, this is exactly how they got it, then they'll start building actuarial tables. But here's the thing, cyber criminals change every day. They're squirrely targets, right? They're going to change their tactics on a regular basis. Sidewalk bumps are not going to do the same thing. People's legs aren't going to change to better accommodate it, right? It's a known quantity. This is not a known quantity. It's constantly changing. That's why it's hard to price. It was very much underpriced in the past, and now it's just going up. And this talks about if the state backed the hack, they're not going to cover. You think about it, like China's got hundreds of thousands of hackers in their military, hundreds of thousands. When you think about this, as a cybersecurity professional, as your business, you have to make sure you keep them out 100% of the time. They only have to get in once, right? So the odds are stacked against us trying to defend ourselves. And then how do we fight a nation state who has lots and lots and lots of money and lots of resources? Hundreds of thousands of hackers. I mean, it gets a little bit overwhelming sometimes. So we do the best that we can. So we had, if you're a part of what we call critical infrastructure, there's a bunch of different sectors that are considered critical infrastructure. If you're in utilities, you're part of critical infrastructure. If you're part of food, you're part of critical infrastructure. All those things, the CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, has lots of resources for critical infrastructure to help keep the country going and to protect themselves. So again, when I talk about like there are free resources out there, you might want to look at some of the stuff that they have. In addition to it, the federal government is starting to make, this is just one example, but they're starting to make a lot of different things on like, how do we help secure the nation? Because if the flu supply gets hit, that could affect a lot of people, right? We saw with COVID something happen and that affected everybody, right? So something like this could affect everybody else. And you may have recognized this, there's a ransomware attack that hit a food company, that food manufacturing company. I think it was last year, and you couldn't get hamburgers. You remember that? It was really hard to get hamburgers for a while, like McDonald's was sold out of them and Burger King was sold out and stuff like that. Anyway, they were hard to get. So you had to order chicken, I guess. But that's what was happening. Really, we had that happen. So we need to make sure that critical infrastructure, protection is part of that, is protected as well, right? Because forbid if we can't have our hamburgers, right? But I mean, here's the 16 current critical infrastructure ones. So if you're in financial services, so CPAs and all that stuff, kind of into that, food and agriculture, that's everything from restaurant to vintners are covered under that type of thing. Government facilities, healthcare, information technology, nuclear reactors, transportation systems, water, wastewater, energy, emergency services, defense industry, dams, critical manufacturing, communications, commercial facilities like the mall and chemical. So all of those things are considered critical infrastructure. They're vital for us to continue as a society. And so they have special, you can get grants for, during some of these areas, there's grant money available for protections. But there's also going to be requirements. One of the requirements is if you're in one of these sectors and you have an incident, you're required to report it to the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Now, that was passed into law last year, and they have 12 months to come up with what the rules are going to be. So by the end of the year, we should know who, what, when, and where, and how you're going to report it. But it's coming. It's already done. So the law was passed. So it's just a matter of time when it is. And so this affects everybody in these sectors. It doesn't matter whether you're local government, state government, whatever, you have to report it. So we're going to actually end up with better reporting. Right now, here's the thing. You see in the news, you might get like last year we got, local governments that were hit with cybersecurity was like 300 some odd. And so everybody's like, that's not too bad. There was 1,200 last year. So that's a good number down. Problem was, you talk to the incident responders, they're like, we responded to no less than 1,200 local governments. So incident response, so that means most of it's not being reported. They're trying to keep it hush hush. So we don't know the real number, unless you're an incident responder. But then there's many companies that do incident responding, so they're not going to know what the other guys are doing. So even if you said 1,200 was how many they dealt with, what about all the other companies that do incident response, right? We don't know. So it's a bigger problem than what we think it is. I usually like to tell everybody who the bad guys are, right? So, and I say bad guys, I mean guys in the way it's non-gender specific. But we have nation states, right? So typically that's China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia. That's not to say the rest of them don't try. It's just they're not really making a big impact, but those ones are making a big impact. We have hacktivists, which we see from time to time. We have some hacktivists involved that are pro-Ukraine, and we have some that are pro-Russia that aren't a part of the nation states, but they are kind of hacking the other ones on behalf of other agencies. But you also have them hacking into other things. We had hacktivists upset about something and hacked into the system, cell phone system a couple years back or something like that. We had someone hack into another local government's website and deface it to make a political statement. So you still have that kind of stuff going on. That'll still be around, although that's probably one of the lowest red areas. Usually it's trying to make a statement. So most of it is like defacement or stopping services. But if you think about it, if you take out the cell phone system so the BART trains can't communicate, you take that down and somebody has a heart attack on the train, that may end up with somebody's lost of life, right? I think that happened, there was a protest, I forget what city it was in, there was a protest during a bunch of the riots, and they were out on the freeway and it stopped all the traffic. Somebody had a heart attack and died, probably would have lived if an ambulance could have got to them. But the ambulance couldn't get to them, right? So there's unforeseen circumstances. I'm pretty sure that all the activists or the activists at that point in time weren't thinking, I want to go out and kill somebody. But it ended up killing somebody, right? So we have to be careful about that and protect ourselves against that, because we don't want loss of life, obviously. But also, if you're a small business and someone hacks your website and you faces it, it's going to make you look bad. Your customer may not be too happy about that, right? One of the ones that I always talk about a long time ago, the CIA's website got hacked, and you faced the CIA's website, right? And so everybody freaked out. The CIA got hacked. They're the spy agency, and they got hacked, but they didn't get into anything. Right? They just got into the website, which is not a part of where any classified information is stored. So they got some, external thing. Problem is, what is the perception, right? And so you have to deal with the perception with, in that case, hackers. You have cyber criminals, mostly just motivated by money, just want to get money. So if you get attacked by one of them, it's going to be much more like a business transaction than it's going to be anything else. You're like, hey, so you're going to pay me, and I'm going to give you back your stuff, or if you don't pay me, then I'm going to do that. We also have insider threats. We have people that do things maliciously because they get upset, but then we also have people that are, just mistakenly click on something, and then that brings your whole system down, right? So we have those different types of insiders. Some of them are malicious, and some of them are not malicious, right? So we got to be careful about them too. There was a good example. One guy in Australia applied for a job at a water treatment plant, didn't get the job, so he hacked into their system and then spilled all the sewage into the river, millions of gallons of it, as a protest that he didn't get hired. So I don't know where he fits in his category. Not really an insider because he was, applied for a job and didn't get it. Maybe a hacker. But here's the thing. Not only did they have to spend a lot of money to deal with the cyber side of things, but on the physical side of things, there was an environmental impact, right? And now the cleanup of that now becomes a big, huge cost, right? So the cyber and physical keep on getting, one thing happens and it has a physical impact, right? So we have to be careful about that. Why is all this stuff increasing? Well, bad guys are getting more sophisticated, part of it. There's remote work, right? That's part of it. Not necessarily as much maybe as we would have expected, but I told you about 2 remote vendors connecting in. That had nothing to do with COVID. That's just remote vendors normally connecting. Political climate, we had a lot of political unrest. People are doing that. That fits more towards the activist side of things. Cryptocurrency has been a huge thing because you can pay a bad guy and then you don't know who the bad guy is paying for. It just disappears, right? Federal government's made some good progress on that and being able to trace some of it. It's hard to trace, not impossible to trace. And they've taken down some of those individuals and recovered some of the money from the cryptocurrencies. But it's still very much in the favor of the bad guys. Ransomware as a service. Nowadays, you can have hackers that'll do it for you. So you don't even have to know how to do anything other than to get under the dark web. You can hire someone to ransomware some organization, right? So again, if you're a business, you're a cyber criminal, you can go out and try and get all the ransomwares you want, but then, pyramid scheme, why don't you sell it to a bunch of other people and have them help you also do it and give them a cut? So technology, is it ever changing? It's changing every day. It's to keep up with it. Not a lot of regulation in a lot of this stuff. We're starting to see it. I mean, I think the US government's talking about having a warning label on IoT devices. They're going to put some kind of labels on them to kind of remind people of that. We use more and more cloud services. Usually the cloud services are probably more secure than our own systems, as far as someone just brute force trying to break into it. But if someone gets your credentials, they can get in, right? So your credentials become the most important thing, trying to keep people out. But also, a lot of times cloud services is responsible of your staff to set it up right. They don't set it up secure, then bad guys can get in. Now, if it's a cloud service and it's run by Google, Microsoft, AWS, or something like that, it's probably a lot better than if you tried to do it. But if you're setting it up in their system, you're responsible for making sure it's doing all the security, right? So, and then just decentralized networks. Everybody connects from everywhere all the time, right? It's huge these days. Just think about all the ways you can connect these. Same as cybercrime, just give you just a little bit. Microsoft does a digital defense report every year. It's a good thing to go through and read. There's probably Verizon does a data breach report. IBM does a cost of a breach report. Take all those reports, cybersecurity professional, we take all that to kind of come up with an idea, like what's the biggest risk, who's the biggest threat, how do we address it? So it helps us, we call that like threat intelligence. It just gives us information on what the risk is probably going to be so that we can try to address it on a regular basis. But we're starting to say that cybercrime continues to rise, it's not decreasing. There's a lot of just random attacks, they just attack anybody. You know, opportunity, right? You know, it's just like any criminal. They walk by and they see your laptop in your car, they break into it. It's a crime of opportunity, right? Versus it's targeted, they're going to come after you. And we've seen targeted ones, and it's hard to get a targeted one because they're targeting you, right? And we're seeing that cybercrime, you know, like ransomware as a service, just as a service is being available. And we can see kind of different groups being hit. And if you look at this, one of the interesting things is manufacturing is like the largest last year. Right? That's kind of like a huge chunk. It's higher than I thought manufacturing would have been in, but they're attacking them. And then another high one, which I was kind of surprised a little bit, was consumer retail. Like, you know, you think of like going to the mall and, you know, little shops and all this kind of stuff. You don't think they're going to be a target, but they're actually 16%. That's actually kind of a huge amount. The other one is healthcare. Healthcare is being targeted, and part of that is because if they can get ransomware into your healthcare system, you're more likely to pay. Why? There's a life safety issue. So, especially if they can get into heart monitors and all that kind of stuff and break those systems and take those down. So there's more likelihood that those folks would pay it. So they're targeted, I think, because of that. I don't know why that actually did it. The speculation is because it's a soft target. You think about IoT devices, Internet of Things devices. Think about all the stuff you've gone to an emergency room lately. All the different things that are in there, and how many of those things are connected to the internet or to a monitor or to whatever it is. So they're attacking those things. And I kind of already talked about, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but just ransomware continues to rise. It hasn't gone down. A lot of people said last year it seemed like it was going down, but the statistics actually show it's not going down. A lot of places get hit multiple times, multiple extortions, try to exfiltrate the data. Nowadays, they don't even bother locking your system out. Recently, this is a recent thing. They don't try to encrypt your whole hard drives. They just get in, take the data out, and say, okay, we're extorting. You don't pass, we're going to release this information. So they got a little bit lazy. They forgot the first part, or maybe it's just becoming more difficult for them to do that. So they changed their tactics, but they changed their tactics on that. And the other thing that they're doing is when they get into your system, the first thing they try to find and target is your backups. If they get your backups, then you're more likely to pay because you don't have your backup. The other thing they're trying to find on your network is, do you have any cyber insurance documentation on your network? Because then they'll know exactly how much you're covered for. And they'll come in, and they've done this, where we say, oh, we can't afford to pay you, you know, $100,000. And the bad guy's like, here's your policy. It says you're covered for $2 million. So yeah, we want $2 million. So again, when they're in your network for a long period of time, 6 months, they can do a lot of searching for it. And guess what? AI is only going to make it easier for you. Right now, somebody has to physically go in there and look at all these files and kind of look for the right thing. They can have AI do that for them. So they're going to make it easier for them, right? That works for us. Sometimes they do ransomware as a decoy, so they make it look like it's ransomware, but it's really not. It's just making you break this. A good example, you look at different threat actors and look at different nation states. They do different things for different reasons. Some of them are trying to cause destruction. Other ones are trying to do economic, impact on us. China is mostly economic impact. So if they attack you, they're probably not going to lock your system out. They're just going to take all the data that you have. They're going to be looking for things you can think about, like your trade secrets. You know, figure out how what variable wines you mix to make that certain perfect Shiraz, whatever it is. And then they're going to go try and copy it. You think it's funny, but that's what they do. You went to Bill Gates always talks about a story when he went to Beijing or something on a trip back when Windows NT 4.0, before it came out. He was on the street and he already saw copies of Windows NT 4 for sale. Wasn't even released yet.
Wow.
So they took, there's another one, there's a car there that they manufacture in China. It is identical to a Toyota. They stole the plans for it, they just build it themselves. So you do that type of stuff. And so that's one of the things that they're looking for that. That gives them an economic advantage. They don't have to do any research. Here's a car that already works.
Take the lazy way.
Yes, exactly. No R&D, they just do that. And they don't worry about the future because they'll just steal it again and they'll just do it again. Funny thing is, there's a story about that, and Russia actually tried to steal our blueprints and our plans for the space shuttle back in the day. And so they did a bunch of different things. Well, US found out about it. So they took some plans for a design of space shuttle that doesn't work. And they put it in their path so that they came across it. They took it, Russia thought it was a good thing, didn't look at it, started building the thing, never got launched, because by the time they started building it, they finally figured out this is not, this isn't the same thing as they got, right? So that was actually a good thing to do, because they spend a lot of money building something that wasn't ever going to fly. But the problem we have with that is China's doing that, but they're doing it to all the different businesses. You have intellectual property they want, and they want to use it to better themselves. So that's more of an economic warfare type of thing, I guess. It's not so much trying to take stuff out. So if they were in your network, you'd probably never know it. You'd probably just sit there and keep on taking information, just keep on taking it until you find out that they have it. How much is it? So I'd just like to throw some numbers out there. So Microsoft blocks, just Microsoft, 710 million phishing emails per week. Guess what? Still, there's probably just as many that get through.
Wow.
I mean, we use Microsoft services, and we still have, even though they block that stuff, some still gets passed. So there's more than that per week that they see. The time, once a hacker gets into your system, what do they find? Within 1 hour and 12 minutes, they found information that they want in your system. Only takes about an hour. And then for them to start moving around your network, because once they get in, doesn't mean that they're able to necessarily start getting around. They have to escalate the privileges and get into their system. But it usually takes them just under 2 hours to be able to move around your network. So that's the bad guys. So again, if they're going to be there for 6 months, very short period of time before they're at you. Their number one way of getting in there, phishing emails. You log in with your username and password, anybody, now they're in your system. So don't click on anything. And only type your username and password in a place you can trust. Make sure you have multi-factor authentication. Stop a lot. Activism is not new. We saw a surge of that during this war. And they also, nation states will also engage with them and try to get them to kind of help out with that as well. And there's a whole new thing called protestware now. So there's software out there that's kind of like malicious, but its whole point is to kind of, and I haven't seen a good example of this. Microsoft talks about it, but I haven't seen an example. Like here's what the malware does. But it's out there. Just a little bit about nation states. You know, one of the interesting things is, you can read this on my Vladimir Putin once said, if the West thinks that warfare is like it's been done in the past, they're gravely mistaken. And what we think he means by that is they are no longer focused necessarily on what we would call kinetic war, physical warfare. Against the United States. They're not looking at a nuclear warfare against the United States. They're looking about a cyber war against the United States and using that to cripple us. There was a report that came out last week. I was at the RSA conference, and somebody had mentioned that with one of the sessions, that China has plans that if they're going to invade Taiwan, what they will do is they will launch a massive attack against the critical infrastructure here in the United States to debilitate us. We're going to be worried about the power grid being down and all that kind of stuff, whatever the plan, so that we will not be able to respond before they take over Taiwan. Now that's huge. Yes, there's a lot of manufacturing there. We rely upon Taiwan a lot. There's a lot of trade that happens between us. Silicon chips are made there, all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of reliance that we have on them from upstream or supply chain that we have with them. So the loss of that would be huge, not to mention that a democracy would be gone, but that's still a huge impact to the world economy. And so, but you look at their plan, that they're going to attack us, but not attack us, right? It's going to be a cyber war, right? They're probably going to try and make it look like it was. And so we're going to be running around with chickens like our heads cut off, trying to figure out how to get while they're doing what they're doing, right? So this is kind of the new type of warfare. Now cyber is going to be the major component of it. And here's the thing. Has anyone told you that we're at war right now? Russia, North Korea, Iran, and China, in their minds, they're at war with the West on a cyber plane. And we're just like, oh yeah, we're not at war. But no, we're at war. We just don't know it. Yeah. No, that's the issue that we're dealing with right now. So if we look at what they target, there's a huge target in think tanks and NGOs. I was always wondering about this. Why was it like information technology totally makes sense? Why would they want to attack technology? Because they want to take out our ability. They want to get they want to know what Microsoft does things so that they can use that. Kind of like what we talked about China and stuff like that. But I was thinking, think tanks and NGOs, why? Well, there was a book that was written a few years ago, 2018, something like that. It was called Russians Among Us. And it talks about how Russian spies in the 80s were in the United States, how we found out that they were in the United States, how we followed them for a decade before we captured them all at once. And we did a trade with Russia between to trade spies. But they were living among us for years. And some of their targets were to influence think tanks and non-governmental agencies to help guide policy in a direction that they wanted, a pro-Russian, type of policy. We have recently seen, Mayor of Fremont was a victim of this. Chinese spies came and got on his staff, was working for him, trying to influence him in a campaign to make, at a local level, China-friendly policies. Of course, the hope was that person would go on to go to Congress or something along those lines, and then have that relationship already in place to try and influence them in the future. So this area of, and again, it's warfare as far as they're concerned, but it's also cyber espionage, right? But it's just regular espionage. In that case, that wasn't even cyber espionage, that was just espionage at a local level. And that's why I brought it up, because it kind of demonstrates to us what we're talking about, right?
What's your opinion then on maybe China doing that with TikTok?
Oh, this way I look at it, right? So I don't have access to any intelligence information, but when the federal government says immediately stop using this for federal government, I'm like, antenna up. Okay, they know something I don't. So, our stance was to say, no, we're going to ban it too.
Yeah.
We're internally, we're not going to use TikTok. So now you saw a cascading effect. Other nations have started to implement it. Some states have started to implement it and ban TikTok. There's something there. I don't know what's there. Right?
Interesting.
But I don't have to know whether something's there or not to know that the prudent measure is to wait till everything kind of clears up. So in my opinion, don't use TikTok until we figure it all out. But there's something there, because the government is not going to stop doing things unless there is an actual threat. So there is some threat. I don't know what it is. Don't know how it works or whatever it is. Another good example of that is manufacturing of chips and motherboards and stuff. A lot of that gets manufactured in China, gets sent over here. We found that they were putting spy chips on the motherboards that can then connect back to China and exfiltrate data. And so the Federal Communications Commission, SEC, has they call it the covered list. They have a list of products not to buy from. So if you have a electronic device like this DVD player or something, if it has any of these components in it, it'll tell you, don't buy it. Right? Now, how many people know that? Right? But again, it's not something that's very well publicized, but I'm like, okay, we know that those companies are putting, spy chips, hardware spy chips on devices that we're using. This goes back to the 90s. China's been doing that for a long time. There was a kettle teapot, that you just put on your desk that heats up water and then you just make your tea. It actually had a wireless adapter inside of it that would try to connect to wireless networks. Once it tried to get to the wireless network, it would scan that wireless network for information, capture it, and then send it back to China. It was in a hot kettle pot. Wow. So an appliance, you buy an appliance, and they were doing it. That was back in the 90s. Right? This is not a new thing. It's just more sophisticated. Because you probably catch the Wi-Fi, you'd be like, if you have a thing that you can detect Wi-Fi, you probably find it and go like, oh my goodness. Anyway, so they're attacking a lot of stuff. So that's just that. Disinformation, kind of already talked about that, right? They're starting to use disinformation. You may have heard of deep fakes. Getting really, really good with AI. Again, AI being used against you. We saw that with Keen and Peele. I don't know if you saw that, where they did the thing where one of them was talking like he was Obama, and then it was actually taking a picture of Obama, making it look like Obama was actually saying those things. And it was fairly convincing. I mean, you could look at it and say, okay, that obviously his mouth wouldn't move like that. But it's getting better and better to the technology. Think about it. Think about what you do when you go to the movies. Remember special effects back in the day? You watch some of the old movies, you look at it, and you look at the recent movies that come out now, and you're just like amazed at how great everything is.
Yes.
AI is only going to make that even better, right? Or worse in this case. Like if they want to fake somebody, they're going to be able to do it. They have AI now that'll go out. If you're recording this, right? And so it's going to be on the website. They can actually take my voice from everything that I've said here, and then the AI can use it to make it sound like I said something.
Right.
How are we going to catch that kind of stuff in the future? Right? And then once we figure out how to catch it, AI is going to say, oh, that's how to catch it, and like, how do I fix it, and how to work around that? Right? So AI is now just going to make it think like in some instances. But we have all kinds of disinformation out there. Like I told you earlier, the election time is always a big time with this disinformation. You have to be careful about it. That book I was telling you about, the Russians Among Us, that book talks a lot about the disinformation type of stuff that they're now doing. The interesting thing is the book starts with what everybody thinks in our head, like the Americans, that show.
Yes.
It takes that information and then brings us to today, where it's all cyber now. Right. And so the last half of the book, or last quarter of the book, I was like, oh, this is all about what I do, cybersecurity stuff, about the disinformation that they're doing, what they're doing for espionage on the cyber side of things. It's all about that today. Right. So it's just getting worse. I think this is the one about Sure. Well, this one's just talking about efforts to influence U.S. state and local officials. But again, Fremont Mayor was one of those people that was involved in this, right? Unbeknownst to him, right? But there's more of this, and they actually had a warning about it. So again, when the government warns you about something, it's not a one-off, right? It's not just one person doing it. There's got to be a lot more. There's got to be evidence that there's more of it out there. So it should raise a red flag. So what can you do? Because I gave you the horror stories, right? So very quickly, There's a stopransomware.gov. It's a website that'll give you a bunch of things that you can do for your business to kind of protect yourself from the ransomware aspect. It's done by the government. Notice the .gov. Notice the City of Livermore switched their website to livermoreca.gov. That's so that this is to help combat against disinformation. So if somebody tells you something about elections, go to a .gov where you can know you get good information, right? A lot of people will see, there's a lot of places that'll go out and they'll buy a domain. They'll say Livermore something something .net, .org, .info, something else. And they'll try to pretend and make it look like Livermore's website and give disinformation, right? That's why you're going to see most local governments, any federal government, state governments, all going to have the .gov so that you know that that's the legit site, right? And not a fake site. So that's something you should always look out for. Anyways, CISA.gov, Stop Ransomware, great website, trying to help you with it. There's 3 things that you should not do. So normally everybody should come do these presentations, and I always say, hey, these are the 10 things, 5 things, or whatever. There's a lot of things you should do. I want to tell you the 3 things that you must stop doing, right? So it's a little bit different. So the CISA also came up with these, they call them the bad practices. The 3 things you do not want to do. Everybody keeps on doing it. What do you want to do? Use unsupported end-of-life software. So I know that this is recorded, I'm not trying to call anybody out here in the room, but how many of you still have a Windows 7 machine somewhere on your network that is unsupported software? You need to get rid of it. So any software that you have that is end of life, in other words, is no longer being patched, it's no longer being handled by the whoever developer who made it, you need to get rid of it. It poses a imminent threat. For a long time, I still go out and I see people still running Windows XP machines. I'm like, right, you're just asking for trouble, right? So you want to get rid of all that old software. Whatever that software is that you have, it's not just the operating system. You know, you're running an old version of Mac OS, you need to get it to the newest. And if that means you need new hardware, sorry. But if you keep on running on the old stuff, you're opening up for attack.
Because that can affect you on a personal level too. If this is my personal computer that I'm using for business today, and I go to buy something later, then, you know, my credit card information would be part of that, so.
All kinds of other stuff could happen too.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of stuff that can happen. So all the technology we use, you need to patch everything all the time. Sorry.
Mhm.
But if you don't, it's going to get out of support and out of life, and it's going to be at a higher risk for you. So this is number one thing. Don't do that, because and also your cyber insurance will say that if this was a part of the attack with you, or this system got compromised because it was out of date, that's an exclusion of coverage. So you want to make sure you're not doing it. The cyber insurance people even get it. They're like, okay, if you want to keep on running the old stuff, that's fine. We're not going to cover you that. So you spend a lot of money on insurance and they're not going to cover you, right? So keep up with it. Use of known fixed or default password. I thought we got past all that. I thought really today everybody knows to change your password on your domain. No, people don't. You buy something like this DVD player, you don't realize that it has a web interface and it has a login for it or whatever, and you don't change it, or your little Nest, thing, or your wireless access point. Now, most of the manufacturers, not all of them, most of them now will have a sticker on it that has a different password on it, right? And a lot of them will even tell you to change the password after you get that unique password they have. But there's still a lot of software, especially network stuff, that has a default password or password or something, whatever. And they'll tell you in the instructions to change it, but people don't change it, right? Now the bad guys will just go in there. There's websites that say, hey, if you have a D-Link router, here's the default password. And people just keep on looking for D-Link routers on the internet and keep on trying that password until they find one that's open. Right. So it's all, if you know what's written in that manual, the bad guys know. Right? So you got to change those passwords. Third one is don't use single factor authentication. Username password is not enough. Right? So that's what we have to talk about from now on. Username password is not enough. You need something else on top of it. Now, if you get multi-factor authentication, the good news is it doesn't matter so much that you change your password or if it's complex. You can make it easy to remember password. You can use your dog's name as a password if you really wanted to, if you have multi-factor authentication set up, right? Because now, even if they know your dog's name and your username, they're still not going to be in. Now, multi-factor authentication, just as an FYI, is not perfect. There are ways the bad guys can get past it, but it takes a lot more effort on their part to get past it. And there's plenty of other people that are not using multi-factor authentication. So, again, it's not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve all our problems, but it goes a long way to solving a lot. So, don't use just username password. Go on to the next level, kick it up a notch, and just use some type of multi-factor authentication. So Livermore has on their website all kinds of stuff that kind of help you with that. That's what the CyberSafe Livermore I talked about at the beginning of this presentation is about. So you can take a look at what we have there, and we have a lot of resources for you. We have some cyber safety stuff for families, and this is just the top of the page. There's a lot more underneath the page, and we'll update this as the future comes. But there's a lot of stuff like basic cybersecurity safety. This is perfect for family stuff, right? We have stuff for what to help with elderly folks. You have your parents living at your house with you. What do they need to know? What they're targeted, believe it or not. So how do you protect them as well? They're not digital natives. They didn't grow up with technology in their hand from the time they were a little kid. So how do they protect themselves? But then also even digital natives, they have a tendency to overshare. They don't understand what the risks are. So how do we protect them as well? So stuff for K-12 is in here as well. So there's a lot of stuff for families. Definitely recommend you use it. We have a lot of stuff for businesses. So if you're a business and you want to learn about some of this stuff, there's all kinds of stuff. A presentation I have with the Growers Association is up there. This presentation will be posted up there as well, so that people can download slides in the future. But the bad practices, you can see them right here on this page too. So all the stop ransomware, that information is there as well. So we're trying to gather the resources. You don't have to go look for them. If you go to your favorite search engine and type whatever, you may not necessarily find all these websites, right? So these are very specific ones. Most of these websites here are government-based or nonprofit-based. They're not biased. They're not a vendor's website. We try to get it the most current non-biased information that we can get, right? Because if you go to a vendor's website, you say, yes, buy our product and it'll solve all your problems. That's not the case. So, not that they're not good vendors, I'm saying, there's a lot of marketing. Where to report cybercrime? So there's different types of cybercrime, everything from stalking, what happens, there's a thing called revenge porn where somebody will take pictures that they have because you've got a relationship with them, they post them on the internet. There's a way to get that taken down. Actual thing, the recourse you can take, but you have to know it, right? So there's information on that. You keep on getting spam. What do you want to do with it? You can report it. And the more you report it, the more likely the federal government will investigate and then take action against those people sending marketing, unsolicited marketing, and phishing as well. You get a phishing email that's asking you, click on something, it's phishing, you just report it to phishing.irs.gov. That's the one they want for just related, if they're pretending to be the IRS, you want to send it to them. But there's also uscert.gov to report phishing as well. So I put those all into my list and I just report it to all of those anytime I get phishing emails so that they're aware of it, so that they can then tell the public about it, or they can go back and try and figure out who sent that email and then see if they can take it down. I don't know how successful they are with it. They don't give any statistics on what they actually do with all the information. So I just report it. There's a bunch of other stuff on page 2. It's not showing here. And then education and career. So somebody may be interested in having a career in cybersecurity. A great place to start is Las Positas. They got some introductory courses over there, so I recommend those. And then there's some other stuff. There's a career pathways and stuff like this. One of the things that the federal government in general or the world is suffering from now is not enough cybersecurity expertise. We have more jobs than we have people that can fill them. So just about if you're in cybersecurity and you're not in cybersecurity and you want to have a stable job for the next decade, get into cybersecurity, you're probably not going to have a problem finding a job. You have to travel a little bit for it, but you're not gonna have a problem finding it. So that website can give you some of that information. If you're in education, and you're looking for curriculum and stuff, all that information's up here. Two, in addition to that, Livermore has a cybersecurity awareness gamified application that you can sign up for. You can go to our website, sign up for it, and then we can send it to you. It does little games, it'll ask you questions, and then you can, there's little bubbles that pop up, say which one's example of phishing, and you click on it, and then it gives you like a leaderboard and stuff. So other than that, that's the end of my presentation. So is there any questions or?
That was great.
It was.
That small, medium business perspective, what they're worried about, and what they should be worried about. That was great.
That was excellent. Mhm. Well, thank you, Don. The Chamber of Commerce is so pleased to be partners with you, with the City of Livermore in this presentation. And this is the Ready Livermore Business Workshop. It has been recorded and it will be posted on the Chamber's website. And also, I believe you said on the City of Livermore's website. And the next workshop will be on business continuity, and that will be on May 11th here in this conference room from 11 to 1. We're just so happy to have you here and be partners with you. Lunch has been provided by the City of Livermore, so please help yourself to that. And thank you again for this great presentation.